All right, everyone, welcome to another episode of The Urban Gardener. I'm so glad that you all could join me today for this episode. And if you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button down below. Follow along with more garden adventures here on The Urban Gardener. Today, we're out in our garden alleyway here. We're going to be planting out some of our corn a little bit later on, but it's that time of year. Summer's just hit us, and it's time to harvest all of our garlic that we planted out this last fall. Now, I want to put up an iCard right up above right now to the episode where we planted out our garlic to go over how we planted that out. But today, we're going to get down and we're going to pull it out of the ground, and we're going to see what kind of results that we got from our different types of garlic that we planted out this last fall. Let's go check that out. So one of the cool things about growing in the garden is sometimes you don't have to do any planting yourself. Now, these plants here are grown as volunteers from seeds that were dropped from plants last year that grew inside of these buckets. I do believe I had a true black brandywine, which is what this one's looking like with its leaves there, if I remember correctly. And then another cherry type tomato, I believe, is what we grew here as well. So we'll be looking forward to those volunteers growing and producing us some fruit here later in the season. And we have another volunteer that's over here. This volunteer, however, grew out of the garden in another spot, and it wasn't a really good spot for it. So I did dig it up and relocated it. As you can tell, it's a little weak as it's going through a little bit of transplant shock, but this will be a better space in this garden for this tomato plant to grow, get the space that it needs. And right over here, we've got another volunteer of some sort. I'm not exactly sure what we're gonna get here. Maybe some sort of melon or cantaloupe or something like that that we grew in this space before. Volunteers are really nice, like I said. You ain't got to do any seeding to get those guys. And they pop up when they're ready too, so hopefully we'll get some really nice strong plants out of them. Now, on to what's right behind them there in this space here. Put an iCard right above right now to our raspberry episode where I pulled raspberries out of this garden space and relocated them into containers. One of the things we talked about, though, is the root system of raspberries. They're really tough. Once they get into your garden, they start spreading themselves around. And as we pulled them out, thought we got most of the roots as we would hope to have gotten, but some of them were left behind. And just even little pieces of roots grow into full-size plants and start coming up into your garden. So we'll have to weed these out just like we would any other sort of weeds we don't want in our garden. Okay, right here we've got our garlic patch. Right here in this space we're growing out elephant garlic. And those flowers are from the elephant garlic there. So we'll be putting out seed here soon. Now, we probably should have cut the scapes. They're little curly scapes that come off the top of your hard neck varieties of garlics. Probably should have cut those off at the time before they straightened out and put out their flowers. So we'll see what kind of garlic we get out of that from some flowering garlic out of there. Next to it, we've got another variety here. I believe this is a variety that we grew from cloves that we had from last year's garden. Our garlic is starting to fall over. There's a lot of dead leaves going up the stalk. Now, the fallen over part, I mean, you can get your garlic in the ground just a little bit too long sometimes, and the cloves will start splitting. So we'll see what we get when we pull these out of the ground. But you do want some leaves to die off Once you start seeing about 4 or 5 leaves going up the stalk, they're dying off, your garlic should be ready for harvest. All right, so it's now that time of season for us to start harvesting our garlic up out of the ground. Now, we started our garlic all the way back in October. Now, we start garlic in the winter time because garlic needs to sit into the ground and get that really, really cold frost, go dormant, and then it grows bulbs, which it considers in its second year at that point in time. So the cold basically turns the clock for the garlic, and once it starts to warm back up in spring, the garlic believes it's in its second year and starts growing out larger bulbs at that point in time. So our garlic's been sitting in the ground for plenty of time throughout this spring. It's now right at the very beginning of summertime, which is really a good time to start looking for the signs that your garlic's ready to harvest. Now, in the previous clip, I showed you that it's starting to fall over. The leaves from the bottom up are starting to die off. And you're looking for about 3, 4 or so leaves to start dying off, and then your garlic, you know, will be ready to harvest. And when it starts falling over, you might have gone just a little too far. We will see, as I said, as we dig these up and find out. Also, real quick here, we've got our garden fork here. Now that's what we're going to use to loosen up the soil all around our bulbs. That way we're not sticking in a shovel or something like that and possibly piercing our cloves that are under the ground. And we're just going to kind of loosen up around the base of all of the plants. That should get our soil really nice and loose, and we can just kind of lift those right up. So let's get down in the ground and start pulling some of these garlic out and see what we've got this year. Now we've got all of our garlic harvested up. Ended up with about a dozen or more nice bulbs here. They all look really, really good. We've got some really decent sized ones in there. Also, there's a couple of little ones as well. And as far as talking about how late we got them out of the ground, they do look, for the most part, look really, really good, but here's a sign you've waited just a little too long too. They start pulling up little garlic bulbs up the stem. So just a little bit late on it, but we still ended up with a lot of really good garlic right here out of this patch. So let's go check out our other back alley garden patch and see how those garlics turned out as well. All right, so if you watched the episode from our fall planting that I put an iCard up for earlier in this episode, you'll know that we planted out several different varieties. The garlic that we already harvested before was our elephant garlic, and the garlic that we had kept and saved garlic cloves from the garlic we harvested last year. So we took care of those there. In our back alleyway here, though, what we did this last year is we went to the supermarket organic section and we purchased garlic from there to separate the cloves and plant out here on this half of this garlic bed here. And on the other half, we planted out garlic that we purchased from our local farmers market. So we wanted to check out the difference of what we could get from just garlic cloves that we can purchase from our local markets. And as well as you can also tell, these plants are pretty much laying over, so we'll see if we've kind of waited a little bit too long. But for the most part, I think we'll be doing pretty good based on what we got from our results from our previous garlic. So let's dig in there, let's see what we got. this area, which ended up being the garlic that we got from the supermarket. We ended up with a pretty good harvest out of there. We got some really nice sized bulbs. And that's pretty good size for a soft neck garlic bulbs there. And then here though, I want to show you just little signs that we did wait just a little bit too long. Your garlic starts to separate even more. It starts pushing the bulbs out. Then eventually these things will separate on their own, and garlics will end up bunching in the long run, as it'll push off its cloves off of the bulb and form new plants. So you get a couple of little ones in there, but we got some really nice ones there from the supermarket harvest. Now let's take a look over here at our farmer's market harvest. Again, it's a pretty decent harvest here. Got a couple of really nice sized ones in here. Some pretty good sized garlics. Out of all of them that we grew, the cloves that we saved from last year, the supermarket and the farmer's market here, I have to say that we got the smallest cloves off of these here from the farmer's market. Now, if I do remember correctly, we were picking out of the bottom of the basket at the farmer's market. We're looking at probably not the best quality of ones that we could have got, but look at that. We still got a really good harvest. We got a lot of really good garlic here. Just goes to show you don't need to go and spend a ton of money on garlic cloves in order to grow yourself some really good garlic at home. All right, so what we have now is we've got our back alleyway here where we plant out our corn. So what I've got this year is just some corn that I basically just soaked overnight. I do like to chit out my corn a little bit usually when I grow it out, and that's what I usually do. But like everything else we're doing in this garden this year, we're running a little bit late with everything, as you can tell with the garlic. And right about the time that we harvest our garlic out, I'm planting out my corn. Luckily though, here in Southern Oregon, we got a really long growing season, so getting my corn out now isn't going to be a problem at all. In fact, it might even be beneficial. When this corn is starting to ripen, it should be starting to cool off for the season. So cooling off is really good at helping making things just a little bit sweeter. So as the cold starts to hit in, your fruits and vegetables start to just get a little bit sweeter. So hopefully that's one of the benefits we'll get from starting out a little bit late with our corn this year. So I've basically spread out a bunch of compost, and I've taken my garden fork and I've kind of poked holes along the way so that we can just drop in some seeds. So let's go drop in some seeds and get our corn going for this year. All right, so there we go. We got all of our corn planted out for our back alleyway here. Let's go plant out some corn back in our other section. All right, so in this patch here, just right next to where we grew our garlic, similar to what we did in the back alleyway there, we're preparing this bed to grow out our other variety of sweet corn that we're gonna grow this year. We're gonna plant it around this mystery melon that we got here. And so like before, we laid out a nice fresh layer of compost. And then I've poked some holes in there with the garden fork, about an inch or so, inch too deep. And we're just gonna lay in our corn there. And in about a week or so, we should start seeing starts rising up out of there. And we'll see what kind of good sweet corn we get this season. The thing to remember about growing corn too is we've put them all out in these patches, and we've grown a bunch in big groups. Now, corn's really going to require being grown in big groups like that because they require help from each other and the pollen to kind of fall and spread all over the place amongst the larger group of corn in order to get that pollen onto the silks of the corn ears, and so that you get a better chance at better corn ears if you have your plants planted all together. So we've got our plants all planted out here. Look forward to seeing those again later on this season. So all right, now we've got ourselves a couple of really nice varieties of sweet corn growing in our two different patches that we have in our back alleyway and our side alleyway gardens with the in-ground space that we have here at home. We're looking forward to having some really good corn. I just want to kind of say I haven't really done too well with corn yet in the last couple of seasons that I've been growing, so hopefully we'll get ourselves some really nice ears of corn this year. I'm really looking forward to seeing how that turns out. Also, what a great garlic harvest that we had again this year. Garlic's just one of those things that I really enjoy growing. I've been growing it now for about 4 or 5 years. The first year really messed up, didn't get the whole idea that you should be planting them before the winter time and then harvesting them right around the beginning of summertime. It's a really key point in getting yourself some really nice garlic bulbs growing. So we ended up with a really good harvest from the different locations too. Remember, like I said, we don't need to be going in mail order buying expensive garlic cloves unless you really are into trying some of those different varieties. But if you're really just looking to get some garlic into your house and into your pantry for use year-round, just get some from your grocery store. Make sure it's the organic section and plant out those cloves all over your garden space and enjoy some really great garlic this next year. I want to thank you all so much for joining me today on this episode of The Urban Gardener. Now, if you have any questions, comments, concerns, or anything at all about our garlic or our corn, hit me up in the comments section below. Now, give this video a big thumbs up. And like I said at the beginning, don't forget to subscribe if you haven't subscribed already. Follow along with more garden adventures here on The Urban Gardener. And I'll see you again on the next episode. All right, let's see if this works. Get it going up here like so. Wind's gonna kick in real good while I'm here, all set to go. View of the leaves above the soil line to start dying off, and really ruining that. We'll go right back again here. All right, so they've been sitting in there. So our garlic has been sitting in there. Pull up these cloves and see what we get. Show you real quick, we've got our garden fork there. That's what we're going to do. All right, and to show you real quick here,